Right, so Spirit wants you to know you had some trauma bond energy in your energy field. I believe you've let this go because we've got the cleanup card here, but for a long time, you may not have realized, but you were alchemizing and transmuting these energies, but essentially they were draining for you. They could have been people that were jealous of you and didn't want to, or envious of you and didn't want to admit it, or you didn't want to see there was that aspect going on. And they essentially were playing games with you. They were projecting onto you, possibly giving you bad advice. And you're on a separate path to these people. It does feel like friendship to me, or family, work situation, but again, it doesn't have to be. We do have karmic masculine and twin flame has come out, but this energy in particular, but just put it where it fits. Archangels have come out and protected have come out, and 222. So you're highly protected, and Spirit wants you to know that you're amazing. Well done. And I think part of their well done is that you found this separate path. And you recognize that where you're not sort of, I'm hearing the word tolerated, you didn't feel tolerated, you simply just don't give your energy there anymore. And if it wasn't that, it was just your value wasn't being appreciated. But I think that sort of changed now. Now your energy is not on offer anymore. People are thinking about you very fondly. In fact, they're crying. Because half of the reason they were I'm hearing whiplash. So maybe they were really playing games, really putting you on edge. But now your energy is not available. They have to reflect, and you're not here alchemizing their emotions. So not only were they throwing their shadow and shade and projections and everything they don't want to see in themselves onto you, you were actually not only alchemizing that, you were alchemizing their stuff too inside of themselves. That's how powerful you are, because you are magic has come out. Maybe this is something you haven't recognized yet, or you are recognizing that you have this gift because of your magical abilities. You have all the clairs and you're a healer more than likely. So what's happened here is that there is another energy. Okay, so yeah, there's another energy. Essentially, these people just didn't offer you any emotional security, and if they were supposed to, if it was parental and they're supposed to provide more security than that, that wasn't really going on either by the looks of things. And you essentially just were in a situation which were trauma bonds, and you've recognized it, and you're protected from this, and Spirit's moved you out of the way, but obviously just wants to remind you what's gone on here. And I do feel the moon card, it was maybe hidden from you for a while. You just didn't want, maybe you didn't believe anybody could be envious or jealous, because that's not how you operate. So you didn't recognize that there was something wrong. Yes, so the more romantic energies out here, and as usual, it doesn't matter yeah, here we are. This karmic masculine, but put it where it fits, because obviously gender's not important. They want you as their wife, which is more, comes out very often in different ways. They're a twin flame, but again, it could be high-level soulmate. This person is now, the penny's dropped for them. They recognize what they gave you was traumatizing, and if that feels too harsh, they definitely gave you conflict. They were draining your energy, as well as these other people, but this, no doubt, this was very draining. So this person's seeking help for their behavior. I think the penny's dropped. I think Spirit's probably made it so that they've been this sort of player for a long time, and they need to get help, because I think they're not finding any happiness there, because we've got the 10 of cups upside down, sorry, the 9 of cups upside down. It doesn't fulfill them. Perhaps they almost did it because it looked, like it, I don't know, I get this feeling like they thought it looked cool to their friends that they're this way, they've got a string of options and they don't commit and stuff like that. But now your energy's not around. They recognize that you're funny and they chose wrong, and they recognize you're pretty and all of these things, which it's not like they didn't recognize it before, but they were just so committed to this player lifestyle, you know, non-committal lifestyle, and possibly just putting you through the ringer. They now want you as their wife, and they want to commit came out. I'm not surprised to see it. It comes out so often, you know, like this person's desperate to be in your energy. But you know, spirit, I guess, wants you to know this. And it's definitely a spiritual connection. So there could have been a trauma bond element to this. You possibly had a karmic contract together that you needed to clear up. So maybe in that karmic contract you've worked out that you deserve better, and you're not going to tolerate nonsense, whereas before, you know, and maybe that woke you up to realizing other things that you're tolerating that you don't particularly want to be you know, you don't need to be tolerating, and it's actually draining you. Perhaps you were sort of in a fog to some degree. You know, you had such an open heart, you weren't, you were somewhat blind, and when you recognized their games, you started to recognize other people's games. But that doesn't have to be for everybody. So I think you could be going into a season where you might meet somebody, because we've got cuffing season out here. So maybe I'm tapping into someone today who's sort of starting to feel ready for a commitment. And if it's not that, maybe friendship, or yeah, so I think that's what I'm tapping into. But it's strange, because when I looked at this card, I thought Halloween. So obviously that's quite far in the future, but maybe for some of you that's what you're thinking. I'm not, you know, you're not looking right now. But again, this message is timeless, so who knows where this is going to land. Lucky break came out again, okay, and that was shuffles in the deck, and I mean, I laughed when this arrived, because that's 4 days running, okay. I do think I'm tapping into people that have had a lucky break from these trauma bonds, and where you've recognized your self-worth, where you've created a separate path with your archangels, where you're not in the dark about, you know, people playing games, projections, bad advice, envy, and all those sorts of things. And Spirit just wants you to know that these people saw you as charismatic, probably more than just that. And they wish that you were friends with them. And I think that even goes for the more romantic feeling I'm getting over here. But you simply just don't trust them. That's, trust is upside down. So I think you've made a separate path. You know, you appreciate these people are fallible, as you are yourself, but ultimately you don't trust them, because now you've taken stock of what's gone on. I just don't think you trust your energy with them, because it was draining, and you're recovering from that. You don't want people around that haven't done the work, and you don't want to be alchemizing emotions that are totally unnecessary for you. We got Write the Book come out, and that's come out a few times before in my readings. So I could be tapping into a writer or of some kind, and then job offer landed on top of that. So that might resonate for some of you. Or Spirit, you know, if that simply doesn't, and you just, it's not something on your radar whatsoever. It could just be simply to write things down, journal, have communication with Spirit. It's like a little sanctuary for yourself. But Spirit ultimately wants you to know that you're almost there. You've cleaned up this energy. You've recognized who doesn't deserve to be trusted. You've got a lucky break on the way, possibly through a job offer. Very well could be to do with writing, but again, it doesn't have to be. Yes, these people, this twin flame situation wants to commit to you now. Your energy's not around. And yes, these friendship or family or whatever want you in their life to be friends. But you don't trust them. You don't trust them. And the archangels, I guess, are just nudging you to remind you of this. I'll carry on, but yeah, so your class is the runner now. Now that you recognize that you don't want to be in a situation where people playing games with you, and and perhaps before you were considered the chaser energy in these energy fields. I don't think you are running away. I simply think you're like running to yourself. Something that wasn't going on before. Yeah, you're a high priestess. Yeah, so people are aware you're not going to be fixing this situation. Karma's come out. Because you've learnt the lesson. Karma's a lesson. I think you've learnt the lesson, and you're heading towards your good fortune, whatever that might look like for you. Sometimes maybe you've just got more time on your hands. Maybe you have more time to, you know, rather than being jolted and stressed. Yeah, maybe you have more time for spirituality. You know, you've built a little corner in your room to dedicate to spirituality. So this person, and I don't think it's just this person, these people want to know, will you ever love them again the way that you did? I don't really feel like, I mean, obviously put it where it fits, but for the most part, I don't think you've made your separate path and you're like, I don't love you, you're evil. I think you understand the dynamics of what happened here. You were working with people that hadn't done the shadow work, and they were projecting things onto you, and you were absorbing it without knowing, and you were alchemizing and transmuting a lot of energy you simply didn't have to. I don't think you're, I mean, put it where it fits, there might be some of you that, you know, you genuinely do feel hate at times, but I think for most of you, if you take a sort of eagle view at this, you can see not so much that it needed to happen, sorry, words break down, but you learn a really valuable lesson. Yes, there might be pain and you're still healing, and it could take some time, but for the most part, I don't think you've left out of sort of, you know, like slamming the door shut and like, I'll teach you something. I think you've literally, your archangels have vibrated you out of this so you can use your magic for better things than transmuting and alchemizing energies of people just playing games with you and then possibly getting in the way of your fortune. I don't always think that is about money, but I think it is just your well-being, your happiness, what works for you. Yeah, I just saw flash good health. Perhaps your spiritual, mental and physical health really took a toll here, and you're not willing to jeopardize that again, at least not in this energy. Yeah, so I'm channeling, maybe I'm in touch with somebody right now, like tapping into somebody that's also a channeler. I wouldn't be surprised, because we've got the magic card and the high priestess here, so maybe that's one of your gifts and spirit wants you to know this. Yeah, so spirit wants you to know that you did what's best for you, and maybe that's a long time coming, okay? And these people, for most of you, it's not a case that they didn't care. They're just not as spiritually advanced as you. They don't alchemize, and that's Archangel Michael. Thank you, Archangel Michael. Yeah, so it's not a case of like they sat there around thinking, oh, I don't care about her, I'm going to project onto her, I'm going to give her bad advice. Who knows? For some of you that may well have happened, but for a lot of you, they were just working on a lower frequency than you. You don't work with jealousy. You don't work to use the other to validate yourself, or even to make yourself, you know, I can't think of the word right now, but use the other to make yourself feel better, you know, jab here and there just to feel better for a moment. Regulate yourself. I don't feel like I'm tapping into somebody who does that. And you don't do that because you don't have to, because you've got archangels working with you. You work with magic. You're a high priestess. It doesn't mean that you've never done that. You know, like you never feel an ounce of jealousy, but you work with it. So exactly, you're working with low. Thank you, spirit. You were working with low vibrational people, okay, and they were just playing games. And for some reason, I think spirit wants you to know that it's not that these people didn't care about you. I think they actually really do care about you. They really do love you, but they couldn't work with your energy. Your energy showed them up, so they had to they had to balance out the feeling for themselves, and you got sort of dragged into that. But these people are having a realization now, and that realization is that you're divine, okay? And you know, we're all made by the divine, so essentially theoretically we're all divine. But I think that you are tapped into the divine. Perhaps now your energy's gone. I just saw an image of like the light bulbs out, and that's quite extreme, but that would explain the crying. But they thought that you'd be around forever, so together forever has come upside down. They really thought that light bulb. Let's say they've got other light bulbs in that room, but your light bulb was very helpful in that room. Perhaps it was the main light bulb. I don't know what that's happening, but they thought it was always going to be there. That light was always going to be there. I say that because I don't, I don't want you to feel like, oh no, they're just, they've got no light whatsoever now. They've got divine, but you're probably as close as, yeah, God is here. You're probably pretty close to the divine, so they could feel it, and they didn't know what that was. Yeah, so it says they'll be sorry, but I suspect these people are sorry. But I don't think you're even waiting for an apology. Yeah, so you just protect your peace now. You protect your peace. Perhaps these people you're incurring more trauma. You possibly, I wouldn't be surprised, people that, often when you're a high priestess and you're working with magic, you can come from traumatic upbringings. It kind of sort of ignites it. Not that I'm condoning anything, but yeah, essentially these people being unfair, and you're incurring more karma, that you simply learnt the lesson, and it's their turn to recognize what they were doing. Yeah, they're missing you. I just saw missing you flash. Anything else in God's will for the highest divine? Yeah, these people took you for granted, and you do, when you do take electricity for granted, and when it's not there, you recognize life is very different when when you've got no light or hot water or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I'm definitely tapping into somebody today who's a high priestess. You're psychic, you're magic, you're probably a healer, you've got all the clairs. Obviously, if that for some of you is just like, oh gosh, like that sounds way too much. It could be that you're just highly intuitive, which they're kind of the same thing in my mind. Yeah, so affirmations are out here. I did feel earlier, I was getting that energy of like, obviously, don't take this advice, this is just nudges from spirit I'm channeling. To make like a spiritual corner or even a cushion, and just, maybe do this journaling, like just to connect with your spirit team or just your higher self, whichever you want to call it. Even if it's like 5 minutes, just dedicate a time to that to help. I'm presuming for the most part, if I am tapping into somebody who's a high priestess and psychic, you more or less might be doing something like that already. You could be just taking a walk, and you're very sort of deliberate and conscious about it. It doesn't have to be sort of like getting on your knees and praying. Yeah, you can have fun with it. You draw pictures. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that too much because it can't be for all of you. So these people, I don't think I think that they were karmic contracts. I don't think soulmates upside down because they were so bad, and they may well have been soulmates, but you're just a separate path to them now. You don't want to be around people that don't believe in the divine in that way and integrate it into their lives. Yeah, and you want people that operate on a high vibration, but an authentic one, not like a fake, oh, I'm amazing, and like just I'm amazing all the time. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's great if you are, but the reality is life does have twists and turns, and everything is amazing. It really is, but you also have to process your humanness, and get back to the vibration. Anyway, I feel like yeah, so these people are heartbroken, and I think particularly I was about to say your ex, but your twin flame, high level soulmates, and I don't know, some of you may not even dated them properly. They try not to think about the heartbreak they're feeling, but it is what is bringing about their awakening, waking up to the fact that you don't see them as someone valuable enough to have as a friend, even because of how they've chosen to use their energy. And it's not a case of like, oh, I'm so above you, my vibration is just so much higher than yours, like, you know, I couldn't possibly tolerate it. I just think you've had enough. You've learned the lesson. You're not doing it for tit for tat. You just want to keep your vibration intact. You don't want to be drained, and you know that vibration, it does drain you. But essentially you were these people's happy place. And perhaps they just didn't recognize it. They didn't recognize they really liked that lamp. Yeah, you're in service now. And if you're not, you're going to be. Yeah, you had draining energy around you. You've got a few draining cards out here. So you could be healing right now from this. You know, you found the separate path. Yes, you recognized you're a gorgeous lamp in some people's lives that they used to attack, and now they're like, where's that gorgeous light gone? But it's not your problem. You learned the lesson there, and spirit and your archangels want you to be alchemizing different things and looking after your health, because it did take a toll on your health to alchemize all of that. And I heard trauma, so they caused you trauma. Yeah, but they're missing you. They're in your energy field, so this is what's happening. Anything else, Spirit, for the highest good of all? Yeah. Perhaps you had abandonment issues. That's why you were holding on to these energies. Perhaps, you know, you were somewhat attached to this karmic energy until you learned the lesson that you don't need to be around energy that drains you, jolts you, projects on you, breadcrumbs you. And spirits and the angels have helped you work out what was going on. Perhaps you didn't even know what was going on, but maybe what's happened also here is that they've recognized that now you've left, you know, I just get this feeling like you created a lovely warm cozy energy, like lovely lamp, thick rug, big cushions, and now it's all gone, you know, like it's just a flat floor, and there's nothing, you know, like, and now they have to recognize their abandonment issues. Anything else, Spirit, for the highest good of all? Yeah, I did feel that, so thank you, Spirit. These people aren't as spiritual as you, okay? So they're not going to see things through the lens that you have, and you have a lens that works with the left brain, which is the intuition, dream, synchronicity, the feminine. And we live in a world that deals with the right brain and kind of ignores the feminine, and just focuses on that sort of male dogmatic right brain, go to work, do this, do that. So they can only look at you through that lens. That's why they couldn't provide you any emotional security. That's why they had to project on you. That's why they're not that as tapped into the divine. But now you've taken away that rug, that lovely warm lamp, and all of those things. They're angry. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're saying that for them to deal with it, because they've incurred trauma now. They didn't know that, you know, like if you stamp all over that rug and bring in dirt and try to set fire to things and stuff, that it would go. And now what's happening is, I think they might be saying things like, you've got abandonment issue, you got fear of intimacy, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're saying that you think you're better than them, you know, that kind of energy. Yeah, I don't think that's just one energy, but I don't think they live there. I'm not going to lie, I don't think they live there, but occasionally when they think about it, when they're missing you and they're in their ego, in their right brain, not that tapped into feeling the trauma, not tapped into their intuition, this is how they're feeling, because you were their happy place, you were their warm, comfortable place that they like to stamp their feet around and feel almighty, and they haven't got that opportunity anymore, and it's traumatic for their ego. But you know, they'll learn, and the divine will be looking after them, so you don't need to like worry about it or anything. Yeah, so love is upside down because your love for them is changed. You may well just simply, you're like, no, I don't love them anymore, actually. And if it's not that, that's fine. The contract may have completely ended, and you just don't, that you've only got so much love in your heart, and you've given it to yourself and who you want to actually give it to. But it could just well be that you just don't want to. You just see it differently. Like your love is, I was going to say conditional, but yeah, perhaps it was unconditional, and now it's conditional, because you don't want that kind of energy in your energy field. Yeah, they just didn't think that you would be completely done. They didn't think you would escape. Yeah, so that they didn't think you would ghost them. They didn't know you had faith and things like that. They thought you were trapped, and they thought you would never leave because it would bring too much pain. And maybe one time that was the truth. Maybe that was the truth. And also, sorry, these people are upset that they can feel you don't love them as much, or the unconditional love is become conditional now. But put that where that, or it doesn't exist at all. So just put that where that fits. Yeah. So these people are upset that you wouldn't even meet them for coffee. They feel really abandoned by you. So do pray for them if that's something you want to do. Yeah, and it's bottled up, so they're probably not, they're not even facing it themselves, which might mean that they just end up projecting more, getting angry, and do more low vibrational stuff until they learn that they were wearing a mask and you saw through it eventually. Yeah, they could be feeling lost. Anything else, Spirit, for the highest good of all? Tell me more about that, because that coffee date was upside down, and then the card came down and it flew out. Just be, this feels like that. I think their energy came rushing through. Just be careful about this person. Yeah, they want to commit to you, but they might come in with a coffee date, because it says they'll be contacting you soon. And when I looked at it, it said ravenous. So I think they're probably having a lot of sexual thoughts about you, or something like that, or that is their plan to sort of, wine and dine you rather than a coffee date. Yeah. Although this person has learnt a lesson, and their abandonment issues are ripe and raw and open, and they're considering getting help and all of those things, and they recognise where they want you in their life, they haven't ascended. Not in this energy right now. And I think the trust card is upside down because they can't be trusted. Anything else, please, Spirit, for the highest good of all? Perhaps you had deja vu with some of these people, particularly when you were closing out the cycles. Yeah. Yeah, I think for some of you, it does feel like friends, but again, it doesn't have to be. It could be work, anything. You did have past life situations with them. It was a karmic contract you agreed to, and it was for you to wake up and hopefully them to recognise that their ways. So it could be soulmates, or it's just or karmic contracts. But essentially, they were just triggering you. And essentially you got triggered and triggered and triggered, and I think the divine made you realise you don't need to be there. Like, you've learned the lesson. You don't need to keep putting your hand on the stove to recognise it's hot, and skin doesn't belong there. Anything else, Spirit, for the highest good of all? Yeah, so you made the decision to walk away from drama, and even if these people weren't particularly dramatic, they were causing you inner turmoil, inner drama, and I think you were in denial about it for a long time. Yeah, and they gossiped about you. I think you were just in denial about who these people really were. And again, they're just working from the lens and the experience that they have. You know, who knows, 6 months time they might have a full awakening, and they don't do that anymore. Yeah, so these people see you as charismatic, magnetic, but they would do. You're a high priestess, you know, you work with magic and the archangels, so of course you're going to have that energy. And that's possibly why they behave like this, because they felt like, oh, well, if she has that, I don't have that, so let me poke holes. But they do have that. They just haven't seen it in themselves. You know, you're chosen. It's funny because when I was saying that, it's like, well, maybe they're not exactly like that. And not everyone is chosen. But again, if you've if you've listened to any of my other videos, it really doesn't mean that you're better than anyone. But I think for the most part, when you are chosen, people don't treat you very well because they can feel it on an unconscious level. You know, that you're gifted and you're all of those things, and you do succumb to people's shadow and so forth, which I'm sure you know, but Spirit wants to remind you. Okay, so you could have had a mother figure doing this who wasn't much of a mother figure, you know, somebody who was supposed to be sort of like looking after you. We've got Taurus out here. Again, it doesn't have to be, I'm not like that big on star signs because it's all just energy, but maybe somebody who's quite hard-headed. Spirit wants you to know they also were like this because of your chosen status, your magical energy. Yeah. These people are receiving karma for the energy that they were dishing out to you, that you were having to alchemize and transmute consistently. Now you've gone on this separate path. But I don't think you're going to witness it because they're not going to be in your energy field. You're not even going to meet these people for coffee. So, and I doubt you're scrolling their social media or anything like that. That's not the energy I'm feeling. I feel like you've made a completely different path. You have no desire, if you ever did. Anything else, Spirit? Oh gosh, I best stop. Could have involved a Scorpio. We've got Scorpio out here, but again, you know, that's a death card in tarot. I think you have just called death to this. You're just writing off as a loss. You don't want people that were in competition with you. I think you sort of feel like life is hard enough. But yeah, these people were dishing it out. They were dishing it out. And you're no longer in love with them. And again, I know if it's friends, it's not quite the same sort of vibe there. But, you know, the love is different. That's why the love is upside down. And good health is out here again when I cut that deck. So these people impacted your health and spirit, physical, emotional, mental, whatever it might have been. And I wouldn't be surprised, and especially if you know, when you're high priestess, you're working with magic, archangels, you're chosen here for a mission, and you have this kind of humble energy, but you're magnetic, and you have all this sort of weird supernatural thing, you know, they, for the most part, people don't, if they're not working with the divine and they're not secure, they're going to deal with it badly. And that's what was happening to you. You're essentially dealing with people that haven't ascended and possibly won't be ascending. So Spirit just wants to give you a heads up about that. And I do feel strongly about friends because for some reason, but you do have a twin flame energy in there, but I think these things can translate over to each other. But essentially you just realize you can't trust them. And that doesn't mean they're bad. I won't keep saying all of that stuff. But, you know, you're different frequencies and you recognise you recognise that now, and you put your health first, you put yourself first. Thank you, Archangel Michael. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your protection. And I'd ask you to protect myself and the Divine Collective. So mote it be.